Hello everyone, welcome back to the Putra tale. And today, I will be bringing you a horror story, titled The Most Haunted Motel on Route 66, Disturbing True Story. But before we get into the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and like this video so that I am motivated to upload horror stories every day. And this story, it was supposed to be just one night. Just one room, and just a stop between nowhere and somewhere. He was driving west, chasing a job, a future, something. The sun had long drowned behind the horizon, and Route 66 stretched endlessly like a forgotten scar across the desert. Fatigued and half-dreaming behind the wheel, he spotted a flickering neon sign buzzing like a dying fly. Desert Moon Motel, vacancy. It looked like a postcard left out in the rain, faded pink paint, crooked blinds, and a rusted ice machine wheezing in the dark. He pulled in. He should have kept driving. The desert stretched out before him like a quiet grave, endless and aching under the weight of a red-gold sky. He wasn't looking for trouble, just a place to rest his bones. But that's the thing about certain places. They're not waiting for visitors. They're waiting for someone specific. The neon flickered before he even noticed the shape of the building. Desert Moon Motel. The sign buzzed like it was alive. Like it had been calling him for miles. It sat alone on the edge of Route 66, nestled in a dead patch of land that even the wind seemed to avoid. No other cars in the lot. No lights in the windows. Just that tired sign, blinking vacancy like a nervous eye. He didn't remember turning the wheel. Didn't remember pulling in. He just blinked, and then the engine was off, keys in his hand, and the night pressing in like a held breath. The lobby smelled like time had stopped. Old paper. Cigarettes. A hint of something sour and metallic underneath it all. The woman behind the counter didn't speak. Didn't look up. She slid over a tarnished key with the number 13 etched into a rusted tag. Room 13. Of course it was. No forms to sign. No ID check. Just silence, and that key, waiting like a sentence. He walked down the hallway with that key clenched tight in his palm. The wallpaper was curling like old skin. The carpet was stained with shapes that no longer had names. Every step echoed too loud in the narrow corridor, the sound bouncing like it had nowhere else to go. Like it had been trapped in there for years. The air changed as he approached the room. He felt it in his teeth, pressure. Like the motel was leaning closer, listening. The key turned in the lock like it belonged there more than he did. The door creaked open with a sound that felt too human, like breath through broken ribs. Inside, the room was dim. Not dark, not light. Somewhere in between. The kind of lighting that made everything look older than it was. He stepped in. The smell hit first, iron and mildew. Like wet coins left too long in clenched fists. Like something had bled here and no one had bothered to clean it up properly. A ceiling fan spun lazily above the bed, blades groaning with each turn. On the nightstand, a Bible lay open, not just opened, placed that way. The pages were turned to the book of Revelation. A thin layer of dust covered everything, except that page. The mirror above the dresser was cracked, hairline fractures that ran like veins, like spider legs dancing just beneath the surface. He looked into it for only a second, but something about the reflection felt wrong. Off by just enough to unsettle. As if time moved differently on that side of the glass. He set down his bag, trying to shake it off. Just a bad motel. Just a bad night. And then, he heard it. A voice. Soft. Barely above a breath. Welcome back. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. The sound didn't come from the hallway. Or through the walls. It came from inside the room. From the corner where the shadows clung like wet cloth. No one was there. His skin prickled with cold. Not fear, not yet. Just the beginning of it. Like hearing footsteps behind you on a sidewalk and knowing, in your gut, that you're not alone. He laughed it off, kind of. Told himself it was nerves, exhaustion, the long drive catching up with him. He even forced himself to sit on the edge of the bed. Mattress too soft, like it had a memory. And that's when he saw it. His name, etched faintly into the wall above the headboard. Jack. The letters were jagged, uneven, scratched in by hand, not written. The wall around the name was fresher than the rest. The paint lighter. Like someone had carved it recently. He stared at it for a long time. Too long. The air in the room shifted, thickened, and the silence turned active, like it was waiting for him to notice the next thing. He didn't touch the name. He didn't want to. Because some part of him, the quiet, buried part, knew he hadn't told anyone his name when he checked in. He hadn't said it out loud in hours. And yet, it was there, carved into the wall like it belonged there. That's when the fear finally bloomed. Deep, cold, crawling up his spine with fingers made of ice. He turned on the TV to drown out the silence. Static. No signal. Every channel was the same, white noise, like breathing through a throat full of gravel. But somewhere in the static, he could have sworn he heard his name again. Not spoken. Whispered. He left the TV on. Left the lights on. Laid on top of the covers like a child afraid to disturb a sleeping monster. The ceiling fan creaked above him. The air never warmed. That night, he didn't remember falling asleep. Only the way the static hummed in his bones. Only the way the motel room seemed to breathe with him, slow, steady, synchronized like it was mimicking his chest rising and falling. When he opened his eyes, the digital clock on the nightstand glowed red in the dark. 2:16 a.m. The room felt colder than it had any right to. The desert night should have been warm, suffocating even, but the air was thick, damp, and humming like it had soaked up something unnatural. It clung to him, wet against his skin, like he'd fallen asleep underwater. Something had changed. The TV was off. He was sure he'd left it on. He stared at the black screen across the room. It looked like an open mouth in the dark. Waiting. The silence had weight now. Pressure. He sat up slowly, every movement deliberate, as if rushing might wake something still asleep in the corners. His body felt heavy. His arms, his chest. It was like gravity had decided to pull harder inside this room. The bathroom light was the only one he hadn't turned on earlier. Maybe part of him had been avoiding it. But now, the silence was unbearable. Too still. Too complete. He needed noise. Light. Something to break it. He pushed open the door. The light flicked on with a dull buzz, casting everything in a cold yellow hue. The kind of color that didn't warm a thing. It just revealed how dead the room really was. The mirror waited for him. At first, he saw what he expected. His face. Tired, pale. But then he looked closer, and something twisted in his stomach. It looked like him, but it wasn't him. The skin in the reflection was sallow, almost gray. The eyes were deeper in their sockets, ringed in shadows, wide and glassy like they hadn't closed in weeks. And the mouth, slightly open, slack, like it was stuck in the middle of whispering something he couldn't hear. Something he shouldn't. The reflection blinked. But not at the same time. He blinked first. It blinked 2 seconds later. And it stared, not at his face, but through it. Like it saw what was inside him. Something deeper. Something hidden. And it didn't like what it saw. His breath hitched. His hands gripped the edge of the sink, the porcelain cold and damp beneath his fingers. His heart began to pound, fast and uneven, and for a second, just one terrible second, he thought he saw the reflection smile. The light above him sputtered. Once. Twice. And then, darkness. Thick, complete. Like the whole room had been swallowed. He reached blindly for the switch, for the door, for anything, and that's when he felt it. Fingers. Cold, impossibly cold, brushing against his cheek. Not a full touch. Just enough to know it was real. Just enough to know he wasn't alone in that bathroom. He staggered backward, out the door, into the main room, tripping over the edge of the bed. He landed hard, ribs against the frame, breath knocked out of his lungs. The silence had changed again. It was listening. He sat there for what felt like hours. Frozen. Eyes on the bathroom door like something would walk out of it wearing his face. But nothing came. Eventually, the light in the bathroom flickered back on by itself. Slowly. As if someone had turned the switch in slow motion. He didn't move. The TV was still off. The fan still creaked. The Bible still lay open on the nightstand, but now, the page had turned. He couldn't remember doing that. Couldn't remember anything after the mirror. His body finally gave in. Shaking, aching, he climbed under the covers, not because he felt safe there, but because that's what people do when they're scared. As if the thin fabric could protect them from what lives in the corners of old places like this. He told himself he'd leave at sunrise. That he'd laugh about this. That it was just exhaustion playing tricks on him. But then came the footsteps. Outside the room. Soft. Measured. Pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like someone was walking the hallway, waiting for him to sleep. Listening to the rhythm of his breath through the crack under the door. And they didn't stop. Not at 3 o'clock. Not at 4 o'clock. Not even when he pressed the pillow over his ears. The motel didn't let him sleep. Even when the first blush of dawn crept through the tattered blinds, the air inside that room remained thick, choked with something old and unfinished. He hadn't moved for hours. Couldn't. The footsteps outside had only stopped minutes ago, fading like a slow retreat into something deeper than the hallway. Not silence, hiding. He lay still, every muscle aching from tension, every nerve raw. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt fully alone in his own skin. But the sound that finally made him sit up wasn't footsteps. It was the wall. It moaned. Not like wood settling. Not like plumbing or bad insulation. This was different. This was alive. The headboard trembled ever so slightly against the faded wallpaper. A long, low groan rolled through the paneling behind it, like something shifting just beneath the surface. Something that had been listening all night and finally decided to stretch. His breath hitched. His skin prickled. And then he heard it, a hollow knock from beneath the floor. Subtle. Dull. Like fingers tapping wood from underneath the room. He pushed back the blanket slowly. The carpet was stiff beneath his feet. Every instinct screamed to leave, but something stronger, something heavier, pulled him toward the noise. Compulsion. Like gravity with intention. He knelt beside the bed and started feeling the edges of the floor with shaking hands. The motel had been falling apart for years, nails rising, boards uneven, but near the base of the bed, something gave. A small, soft groan as a loose plank shifted beneath the carpet. He pulled it up. The smell hit him first, rot, plastic, dust. The kind of scent that suggested something buried, something that hadn't seen light in a long time. He peeled back the carpet and found a hole carved beneath the floorboards, no bigger than a shoebox. Inside, wrapped in crumbling plastic, sat an old handheld tape recorder. Gray. Scuffed. Covered in grime. It looked ancient. Familiar somehow. Like it had been waiting for him. His hand hesitated before picking it up. It was heavier than it should have been, weighted with whatever truth it carried. He pressed play. For a moment, nothing but static. Then a voice, low, brittle, cracked like it hadn't spoken in years. "If you found this..." The man's voice trembled. Fast, urgent. "You've been marked." Jack's blood ran cold. "Don't look into the mirror again. Don't answer the knock. And whatever you do, a sharp inhale. The sound of movement in the background, like someone trying to barricade a door. Never check out. Then silence. No click. No end. Just the hiss of the tape, stretching out like it still had more to say. And then came the knock. Twice. Not hurried. Not loud. Just patient. 2 slow knocks at the door. Soft. Like a ritual. Like a reminder. He didn't move. Couldn't move. His limbs went numb. The tape recorder slipped from his fingers and landed on the carpet without a sound. His heart thundered in his chest, each beat louder than the last knock. He stared at the door. The chain lock was still in place. The doorknob didn't move. Whoever, whatever, was outside, wasn't trying to get in. It was waiting for him to open it. The same way a mirror waits to be looked into. The same way the hallway waited for footsteps. The same way the motel waited for Jack. He sat back against the wall, unable to breathe right. He pressed a hand against his chest, half expecting to feel something foreign moving under his skin. He didn't remember how long he sat there. Minutes. Hours. But eventually, something made him look toward the window. The neon sign had changed. It no longer said vacancy. It said, no vacancy. The word pulsed in dull, red letters, over and over again, like a heartbeat echoing through the fog of dawn. Jack realized something in that moment. Something he couldn't say out loud, because saying it would make it real. He hadn't checked in. He hadn't signed anything. No name. No ID. But somehow, the room knew him. It knew his name. It wrote it on the wall. It twisted his reflection. It reached for him in the dark. And now, it had marked him. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled. The floor groaned again beneath him, not loud, just aware. Like it was adjusting to fit him. Something had changed. Not the room. Him. He didn't belong to the road anymore. Or the car parked outside, or the sunrise bleeding in through the window. He belonged to this place. This motel. Room 13. And he knew somehow that someone else would pull into the lot eventually. The sign would flicker vacancy again. The front desk would slide over a key. And room 13 would be waiting. Just like it had waited for him. And the next poor soul? They might find his name scratched into the wall too. Right next to theirs.